Welcome, everyone, to the People Strategy for the Future of Work virtual conference presented by Engagedly. This webcast has been pre-approved for a half HRCI and SHRM credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A box or the chat box on your Zoom controls. Our first webcast, The Art, the Science, and the Practice of Hybrid Workplaces, is presented by Anna Tavis, Academic Director, Human Capital Programs at NYU, co-author of Humans at Work, The Art and Science of Hybrid Workplaces. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Anna Tavis.
Thank you so much. And I am seeing the numbers ticking up. That's fantastic. And I suspect that one of the reasons you're all here is because the topic keeps coming back. When I wrote this book a year ago, it came out. We thought that we kind of get settled on a certain trajectory around hybrid workplaces, but I suspect, and here is my first picture, that the topic is still coming into its own at every turn in the economy, and still with dealing with the remnants of the virus, as well as with the changes in the philosophy of what the workplace is all about. So what I want to do today, in the 30 minutes that we have together, is to offer you a framework to think about in practical terms of what to make of hybrid, what to make of the hype that's around it, and how to actually be thinking about designing for the hybrid workplaces going forward. In general, how hybrid, in my view, is going to define the future of work. And I welcome your questions here. We won't be able to get to all of them, but I would encourage that conversation to flow over then to LinkedIn and other venues where we can continue to talk about this topic. In the time of uncertainty, which still remains to be the case for us, one thing that we need to be really focused on is what is stable. What are the staples, the kind of the guardrails around which we are trying to solve for this issue? And I think everyone would agree, regardless of how you design your workplace today, that the relationship between employers and employees has been continuously challenged through the pandemic, challenged through the necessity to work from home remotely, to be using technology, etc. And in the words of Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, that relationship is now changed forever. And everything we're going to now discuss around hybrid workplaces is going to be anchored in this framework around the changed contract between employees and employees, and how companies need to be listening to and adjusting to this reality. The other thing I want to throw in there, and I'm sure we all have been exposed to a lot of discussion on social media, in the press, that the marketing got into our space, into our HR space, and we've been given a sort of a fire hose of new terms that we need to be dealing with, such as quiet quitting, quiet firing, quiet hiring, et cetera, et cetera. Is this the actual reality of our work environment today? Or is it just the clickbait? Is this just the marketing tools that keep bringing us back to read about these phenomena? But for better or worse, my approach to all of this, to the branding of these new kind of trends and new phenomena, is that it does shine light on the kind of the continuously changing situation in the workplace. So I just want to flag this for you as a way of saying the discussion, just like Larry Fink's quote, the discussion of the importance of the design of the workplace. How are we renegotiating these relationships? What are the staples of the workplace environment today and the worker and employer contract? They're continuing to be in play. As far as those advocates, I have some colleagues actually at NYU who are writing books about the death of the office, et cetera, et cetera. I am actually taking a much more deliberate approach to that. I do not think, again, using the pendulum as a metaphor, I do not think we're going to be settling for work at home. In fact, the home was definitely a solution for when the disaster struck. However, there are quite a few people who want their homes back and they want to see their colleagues again, and they don't necessarily want to, but they don't necessarily want to commute and go through a monotonous routine of the old style office. Everything is changing, including the work from home situation. When it gets to data and surveys, here's where we are. I just pulled out some Gallup data. There are quite a few surveys that came out, and I think for better or worse, and I'm not going to cite the numbers here, if you could take a quick look here, clearly the hybrid is winning. But what is hybrid and why do we need to be paying attention? So let me propose that if we want to be really solving for how the workplace is going to change, how the work contracts are going to be renegotiated, and what's actually in play, we need to look at the full components together. It's a system, it's a framework, and we can't just pull one or the other and be talking about Fridays and Mondays at home and Wednesdays in the office. That's not what hybrid is all about. We need to look at 4 foundational elements of work. It's about work itself, the type of work we're doing. It's about the workplace. It's about the workforce. And finally, the final W is about worth. And by worth, I mean the meaning, the purpose, and the whole reason why we're in the workplace to begin with. So I'm going to take it one by one and explain to you how I see the kind of the components of that equation, the hybrid equation. First of all, we have to start with the type of work that needs to be done. And, in most broad categories, I see 2 types of work: heads down work and heads up work. Very scientific, right? But it definitely explains the types of environments in which these work projects need to take place. The heads down work, we all know, no distractions, focused on delivery, execution, productivity, etc. Often transactional and very well-defined work. Absolutely. Leave us alone. We can do it from anywhere for as long as there's peace and quiet and we can focus. The heads up work, on the other hand, is focused on possibility, discovery, outcomes, exploring new things, and a very important component of collaboration. And so for those 2 types of environments, we actually need to reconsider the whole system of where that type of work takes place. And what we know from organizational network analysis and other types of research into work environments, there are 2 types of ties in the workplace. There are many more, but just again, I'm making it very simple for today. Bonding ties, when we're really working together on a project and we're talking to people every day That's really, really important. And there are bridging ties. These are all terminologies coming out of organizational network analysis. The bridging ties are relationships we build that are not necessarily very tight. These are relationships, occasionally we run into people, etc. And what we know for a fact is that in the exclusively work from home environment, that remote working that everyone celebrated during the pandemic, it's the bonding ties that got tighter, and it's the bridging ties that got very, very weak. And so what we've found, and again, that's the research that's coming out after 2 years of, in the third year of the pandemic, and now we're possibly going into the fourth, that the remote working environments are creating other types of externalities and challenges that we have not encountered before and to the same extent. And that is that, as you see from the Better Up research here, the coaching platform that has been really growing at this time, that remote workers have fewer friends at work. They are actually seeing the attrition and reduction of their network of friends, and they have a significantly less sense of belonging to a company than their peers who are more socialized and interacting at least on a number of occasions. So, the question obviously comes up, is this what's driving the quiet quitting a lot? That people's commitments, people's sense of belonging has frayed, and all it takes is changing your URL, and you are still sitting in the same place, and you are already working for a different company. And obviously, there's lots of really interesting research that I encourage you to look into. That lack of those connections at work leads to significantly higher rates of resignation. And this is a chart that shows if you have one friend at work who you report on, the chances are there's very little that holds you back to a company and the culture. And there are lots of other social consequences of emphasizing and leaning in exclusively into that remote type of work. So more data here. So as a result, the Surgeon General, U.S. Surgeon General issued an appeal officially, first through his book and now through a number of papers that came out of the U.S. Surgeon General office, asking companies to really pay attention to the strengthening connections among employees and partners, et cetera. And if it's not done through bringing people together to the office, there could be other alternatives, but that is definitely something that we need to pay attention to. Workplace. Again, we see the pendulum going back and forth. There are CEOs who are insisting that people have to be back, and CEOs who are saying, no, we are all remote, working remotely forever. I want to point out to a phenomenon. I live in New York City, that we've been observing through the pandemic, when the word was out that everyone was leaving the cities, going to smaller places, going to working remotely from scenic locations, et cetera. At the same time, big tech firms moved in, and the largest real estate acquisitions of signature buildings in New York City were done by these tech companies. And you would wonder why. Why would they want to do that if, as the urban legend was out there, that everyone was supposedly leaving offices and working from home? And so the response is, by the way, Manhattan is now not the workplaces necessarily, but in general, the population is higher than the pre-pandemic levels. So people are coming back to the cities, and I will refer to it later on. But what I've noticed going to a lot of these new locations is the workplaces are beginning to more look like more hospitality centers, and workplace design is meeting hospitality standards. It's about making the workplace magical, finding space for very attractive and diverse working spaces. Again, designing with technology, with sensors that measure temperature, measure air quality, adjust for the number of people in the room, for the temperature, et cetera. I visited a few of these new workplaces in Manhattan, and it was incredible to see the kind of the high-tech capabilities that have been brought in, including the interior designs and other types of well-being and ergonomic oriented focus areas for these types of new locations. So they're beginning to compete with people's homes because very few people can have all of those amenities, all of those technologies that are focused on specifically productivity, attractiveness, and well-being of employees. The other phenomenon that I've been tracking around this kind of hybrid situation is all of the co-working spaces that have popped up. We all know WeWork and kind of the history of WeWork and some of the scandals associated with that, but I wouldn't settle for it. It's really been remarkable to see, including Airbnb. As you can see here, I have a logo for Airbnb for work. You know, there are quite a few places and innovators who are coming in and developing these alternative locations to homes. At the same time, you know, shortening the commute so that people can have, you know, live in a walking distance. There's a walk to work day that's been, I think it's in the UK and Australia, that has been introduced so that companies can still bring people together, can still bring people, teams to be working on, you know, on a project outside of the home, but they don't have to commute long distances, and sort of congregating employees of the same companies close by is something that these co-working spaces have been exploring. The other alternative that is very, very emergent, and we're nowhere close yet to actually working this way. However, some companies are already doing it, and I'm sure in the audience there are people who have experienced the metaverse, and not just the Meta, the Horizon workspaces, workplaces that Mark Zuckerberg promoted, and their technologies, but clearly the some of the technologies that are coming in are enabling the work in a much more you know, in a much more technology assisted ways. And finally, smart cities. You know, we, again, in the pandemic, everyone was predicting the death of the city, and as I mentioned, it's actually not the case. We are going to see the density, again, the city needs to reimagine itself. It's not just the commute center where the office buildings in the center and then it's dead at night. It's actually the cities that are going to be the cultural centers, the hospitality, the dining facilities, the arts and sciences, and everything that, you know, that allows people to connect, not necessarily at work, but at leisure, and leisure, factoring leisure in as, again, as a collective experience and communal experience is something that the cities are seriously looking into. The workforce, you know, this is one of my favorite quotes about what the workforce needs to be looking for in the future. So in the past, jobs were about the muscle, you know, now they're about the brains, and that's why, as you know, brain workers, we're thinking, you know, remote works quite well because I'm engaging my brain and therefore I deliver. But in the future, they're going to be about the heart. And it's a very, very insightful comment from Minouche Shafik, who actually yesterday was named the next president of Columbia University. And so she's moving to New York from London. She was the director of the London School of Economics. She's coming here. An economist who actually thinks that the future of work is going to be about the heart. It's about relationships. And here I'm trying to factor this. Represented through the pictures, here's what it was, obviously if you're just programming, etc. But let's explore what that relational environment would be. And to me, the hybrid workforce is going to be, really about humans and technology. Right now, there's a big hype about ChatGPT. I'm sure everyone and AI is kind of front and center. We're kind of at the peak of the hype cycle around that, and it will settle in. There's a lot of fear around AI replacing humans, but it really is not about that. It really is about humans being assisted through technologies that are going to be, at least not for now. The general intelligence is quite a few years away. But at the moment, I think when we talk about hybrid working, we really need to be talking about this equation between humans and technology, and constantly thinking about how those relationships are going to be changing and how technology will continue to assist humans to be who they are. And finally, we are going to get to worth. So why is it all happening? So just to recap, work is we need to be thinking about what kind of work we're doing to talk about hybrid. Yes, for certain types of work, it's better to be all by yourself, and you can do it from home. You can do it on a park bench in Starbucks or wherever you are. And other types of work will require you to come back and really work with your team, be around people who are similarly motivated and inspired by the organization they're in. And so it's about workplaces, again, offering a variety of different environments, combinations of again, enabled through technology, combinations of different kinds of places, but really bringing people together again, and with a purpose and focus on community, on creating that emotional bond and connection. And then workforce, we talked about, assisted with technology, really, really important. And now finally, why are we talking about it at all? And I think it is about design, how we design with that purpose in mind. I put the quote from US Surgeon General in the front, or Manish Shafiq before this one. And I think the worth, how we design our workplaces around people, because that's the purpose. I think we are oftentimes looking at the issue from the wrong side of the telescope and think about technology first. We need to change that and shift the conversation toward how do we put people in the center? How do we think about preservation of our communities? How do we think about helping through the cycles of isolation and loneliness? And I think that that's where the role of HR is going to be much greater, and the intentional designs around hybrid, that it could be hybrid that will stand for personalized and human-centered, is what we're really talking about. And there's been a lot of conversation around empathy and the role of empathy, and it's almost for the first time that we've seen empathy being front and center in a lot of discussions of leadership, etc. So in my view, empathy is going to be one of the driving design principles, designing with empathy, designing with the humans in mind. And again, we are going to be able to actually identify or explicitly think about empathy through the technology and data that's going to be able to show us what it is. Because oftentimes, you know, we talk about empathy, but we need to go around explaining what it is. But in this case, we're going to see a lot of tools that are going to be able to show the actual impact of the empathetic approach or empathetic design, as opposed to design with specifically in only technology in mind. And I think that at the end, this is kind of a big summary of why it is that we are doing all of this, why hybrid is the right solution for us, is that we are not trying to be better robots than robots, which is the robots are still going to be better at efficiency, productivity, on certain tasks, etc. So that battle is lost. We're no longer going to be competing with robots on those dimensions. But what we really need to lean into and be focused on is to do more human work than was available to our ancestors, and to be more creative, caring, curious. And for that, I would argue, and for that reason, one of the main reasons why the hybrid environments that make us more, that personalized workplaces, personalized work projects, and personalize the types of workforce that companies need to bring in. Those are the environments we are going to be looking into. So hybrid, to me, to conclude, is really about those 4 dimensions. It's about factoring in the work, understanding the workforce, designing the right kind of workplace, and then finally, and probably most importantly, the whole engine behind hybridization of work is why. Why are we doing it? What is the purpose? What do we want to accomplish? And that's going to be a constantly moving target. This is a negotiation that's going to be ongoing, as all of those 4 factors are going to be in play. So that's it for me, and I hope that we have a few questions. I left time for the questions, and let me see. Okay, are there any questions from the audience? Yes, we don't see any questions. So I hope this resonated with you. Again, don't overcomplicate hybrid, but do think about how all of these factors come into play. Caroline, a question: what HR can do? I think most importantly, HR needs to remind the management that it's not about 9 to 5. It's not about 2 days in the office, 3 days at home. It's about what kind of work needs to be done, what workforce we need, what kind of technology should we bring in to help people do their most creative work. How do we create the workplaces where people really want to be working? And that gets into culture and gets into well-being and into healthy environments. And then finally, never forget the purpose. Do you think that Starbucks will double down on their spaces? Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what Starbucks are going to do. Starbucks actually have undergone a lot of change. You know, they created those pickup kiosks. You can see but there's a lot of competition. I think what Starbucks it will have to contend to is a lot of competition to their model. There are lots of, as those of you who are dialing in from the cities, from big cities, know that there are lots of designer coffee shops that are coming in and creating those really, really special, intimate, attractive environments, whereas Starbucks has gone corporate, and that's their downfall. You know, when people have an alternative over Starbucks, they always choose local. At least I live in Brooklyn, in New York, and that's where I always choose a local coffee shop over any Starbucks. Any best practices? Yeah. Dana is asking best practices. Dana, I just went to this new remodeled workplace big center for Accenture in New York City. They developed several of those around the world that are kind of hubs for their work, for their consultants, for their workers. Absolutely incredible space. They put in, there's everything there. There's augmented reality where you could be having meetings with your colleagues from, let's say, San Francisco, and they're in three-dimensional space, not quite metaverse, but they have those techniques. They have metaverse environments. They have robots roaming around so that people can actually experience that augmentation through technology. And what's really interesting, Dana, what I found talking to Accenture folks, that their occupancy rate in the center of Manhattan is up to 90%. So people actually do, even though they're not requiring people to come in, they do see a lot of people showing up because their workplace is just absolutely magical. Fiona's question, what new skills do you think leaders need when handling the hybrid environments? I think for a lot of leaders, it will have to be, understanding the complexity of all of those factors that I discussed. Oftentimes, as you know, the more traditional leaders want to see people in the office. The other extreme of that, which I do think is an extreme, leaders who are saying we are working only remotely, no one is showing up. I think they're overseeing the need of some workers. Specifically, I'm thinking about younger associates, people who just joined the company and were introduced, and they need to see the role models. They need to rub shoulders. They need to go to a coffee shop together with a colleague and have an informal chat. The leaders that say, you don't need to be in the office, I don't think appreciate enough the importance of people coming together. So I think that it kind of goes both ways, that more traditional leaders need to be more relaxed about work schedules, and more people who think that the solution is remote only underestimate the importance of people to build communities, to build bonds with their colleagues. Shreya is asking, would hybrid technology change how management sees HR? Would it be more than what it is today? Excellent question, Shreya. I think that HR's role, because there's going to be a lot of tools, analytics are coming in, technology is being introduced, and they will take over some of the transactional work that HR is doing today. So I think the role of HR, something that we always wanted to do, is going to be elevated to the level of design. If there's one skill that I would encourage everyone who is in HR to be focused on, is learn those design skills, because you're going to be working with so many different variables, and those workplaces will need to be customized to different cultures, different companies, different types of work. So the skill of design for HR and putting HR in the center with a human-centered design is going to be really, really important. Performance reviews, job performance reviews. Caroline's question. Yeah, my favorite topic. Performance reviews. I think we are going to have, that finally see with the technologies with AI, Chat GPT, and others, we are going to see built-in coaching, so that we don't have to wait to the end of the project. We don't have to wait to the end of the year to get evaluated. We are going to be coached in time on how we are doing on the job. And so the performance itself is going to be turned into a learning experience where if something goes wrong, we get the feedback right away and we can make adjustments. So I think that's the future of performance. We're running out of time here. Do connect with me on LinkedIn. I will ask, I will take one more question by Anali, one of my favorite topics, empathy. Can leaders be taught empathy? Yes. Not only leaders can be taught empathy, but technology will make us more empathetic. If we build the right tools, technology is going to be more empathetic. Thank you.